This is going back a little bit, but in World War I, the Romanov Empire, or the Romanov family, which was in charge of the Russian Empire, was not successful in World War I, which led to a collapse. Poor leadership, bad performance in the First World War, the Tsarist regime, Tsars being more or less kings, Caesars of Russia, ends up collapsing in February of 1917. There's a new government that comes into power. It's called the Moderate Provisional Government, and it faces a lot of the same problems that the Tsars before had. Widespread social revolution, mass desertions from the army, and people increasingly took to radicalized parties to look for solutions. In 1917, in October, one of those parties, the Bolsheviks, is able to seize power through a coup and take control of the government. The leader of that party, Lenin, introduces a revised version of Marxism. And he really goes against Marxist orthodoxy. This is the point that I mentioned in the last slide, where he says, look, even though Russia has not become an industrialized society yet, we are going to skip that step and we are going to introduce socialism. Russia is going to be kind of a beachhead for a coming world revolution. Things aren't all nice and tidy at this point, though, because there are still people fighting against the Bolsheviks. And from 1918 to 1921, while the Bolsheviks control Moscow and a few other cities, they end up fighting a brutal 3-year civil war against a variety of anti-Bolshevik factions. Violence ends up strengthening their power even more. It leads to a lot of violent acts on their behalves. And it's in this era that the Bolsheviks changed their official name to the Communist Party. And through that and lots of reforms and increased social opportunity, they slowly gain a lot of support. In the end, they have lots of different opponents who are divided. They defeat them, the Bolsheviks. Now the Communist Party defeats them, and they establish the Union of Socialist Soviet Republics, the USSR. The USSR, after World War II, kind of remains a lone island of communism in really what you might consider a sea of capitalism after World War II. And faced with the attempt by largely the United States to extend capitalist influence into Eastern Europe with the Marshall Plan, Stalin imposes a bunch of Soviet party-run governments throughout Eastern Europe in what we would consider Soviet Republic states. Yugoslavia, which is the only country not occupied by the Red Army, by the Russian army in World War II, is the only communist state that isn't under Stalin's control. So we'll leave the USSR there for a second, and we'll take a look at what goes on in China.